All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Gabriela Bokic, and I'm an associate professor of linguistics here at SMU in the World Languages and Literatures Department. And today I was hoping that we can talk a little bit about what would be the benefits of sharing our teaching philosophies with our students instead of the typical crowd that they are intended for. So here's a quick outline of what I would like to accomplish today. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about the reason for choosing this particular topic of the many topics that I could have chosen. Then I would like to talk to you about what a teaching philosophy is for your students. What are some of the reasons to prepare a document like this? Also, what are the characteristics of that document? Then I'd like to share with you my own example that I use with my students. I have a few activities for you, and then also hopefully we'll get to the takeaways as well. All right. So the reason for this particular topic is that I caught myself in a situation where not only from semester to semester, but also within semester, I was repeating like a broken record. And I think most of us here can relate to that expression, right? So I was repeating some of the things pertaining to learning and teaching over and over again to my students, but I really wasn't getting to them. And I would repeat on the first day of the semester, right? And so they would obviously forget. Then I would repeat a couple more times, but it simply wasn't clicking, right? And not only that, but also I thought that it was an oxymoronic position because really our students are the direct recipients of how we conceive of learning and teaching, yet they have no explicit insight into how we approach it, right? Maybe after the fact, but really not during the process. I also thought that well, maybe I could include that into the syllabus, and maybe that's what you're thinking right now. Well, okay, so what's the big deal? Just put in the syllabus. Well, I didn't think that that was a good solution because our syllabi are getting longer by the minute, okay? And we also know that they don't read them, so I didn't want to put more stuff into the syllabus for them not to read, okay? And then also the way I perceive the syllabus, it's kind of a document that compiles rules and policies, really. Not so much, it's not really a space for me to talk about my teaching and learning and how I conceive of it and why I do it the particular way and not another way, how I support my students' growth, okay? So then if I want to talk about that, well, that's why you have 3 question marks. Where does that go, okay? And then also I perceive the syllabus as a compilation of our expectations of them, you know? So you have to come to class regularly. These are the assignments you have to complete. You have to complete them in a particular way. If you don't come to class this, if you do come to class that, right? But then where is a spot for us to talk about what they can expect from us, right? Because this is a two-way street, right? Now you can say, well, they already know that, it's understood, it's common knowledge, and I would beg to differ. Maybe it's understood amongst those of us who are here, who are professors, but that's not necessarily something that our students know. So this is how the idea came about, right? So I was thinking to myself, okay, what is it that I'm trying to communicate to my students, but that I'm not really successful? And I realized that I wanted to be able to talk more at length about my beliefs about teaching and learning and how I go about it and why I do it that particular way. And so I thought, okay, well, that really what it is a teaching philosophy, except that it's not a teaching philosophy for, you know, your hiring committee, your promotion committee, your dean or your chair. It's for your students. So there's going to be some overlap, but there's also going to be some differences. So what is a teaching philosophy for your students anyway? Well, in a way, you can think of it as a teacher self-disclosure kind of document, not any kind of self-disclosure. Obviously, it's a document that discloses your values and expectations that pertain to teaching, learning, and discovering knowledge in general, right? And it's a student-facing document, like I said a second ago, so it's going to partially overlap what you hold to be true about teaching and learning and what you did present to your hiring committee and your promotion committee and all that good stuff, but it's going to be written for a totally different audience. That means that while the core values are going to be the same, how you present those values, how you formulate them is going to be vastly different, right? Okay. Why should we do this? Well, in short, we know that teacher self-disclosure is shown to be positively correlated with academic motivation. How does it accomplish that? Well, first of all, it creates transparency around your approach to teaching and learning. It builds trust by clarifying values and intentions. It helps students understand how and why learning activities are structured. It strengthens the report, right? It lowers the affective filter, really important these days when our students are struggling with a lot of mental health issues. And perhaps the most important important one for me is this last bullet where it says students are pulled in to the learning process itself. They're not on the margins of it. And if you've taken if you've attended my other presentations, you know that I like to use my images deliberately. So the way the system is typically set up, I feel like this is us, the professor, and the students are on the outside of what we believe to be true about teaching and learning. And I think that students should be on this side of this divide. Okay, well, so how do we do that? So these are some technical aspects. First of all, this is something concise, okay? This is 3 paragraphs-ish, right? Or maybe a short set of statements. This is not going to be the 2 or 3 pages that you had to write when you were being hired or when you were getting ready for promotion or things like that. So what are you going to plug in? Because you have many things that you believe to be true about teaching and learning. Well, highlight the goals and values and expectations that pertain to that group or to that semester. What does that mean? Well, that means that maybe some things that are important for you to communicate to a group of students this semester, maybe in a next course, in another course this same semester is going to be a little different, right? In another semester, yet even more different, right? So you might have to tweak it from semester to semester, from course to course. Keep in mind that this is a personal document. This is not an extension, to use the banking analogy. And when we talk about banking and we talk about bank documents and they talk about what they call that in English, the fine print, right? So this is not the fine print of the syllabus. This is not the fine print, right? So this is a personal statement in which you communicate to your students how you're going to take them from point A to point B, right, in a supporting fashion. So make it personal. Use the first person singular pronoun, stay away from the passive voice, right? Also use student-centered language like you will, we will, together, right? So the point is to convey the message that we're in this process together. They're not separate from this process. Okay. Excuse me. What goes into a teaching philosophy for your students? Number one, why do you teach or what teaching means to you, right? So it gives students some insight into your motivation and values. I have some examples here. This is going to be different for everyone, right? Teaching is a collaboration kind of process. My goal as a teacher is to help you connect to what we study to your lived experience and so on and so forth, right? So these are some examples of that. But again, if this doesn't resonate to you, it doesn't matter, but the characteristic has to be there. What you can expect from me, and this was really important for me, right? Because nowhere in my syllabus did I have anything along the lines of what looks like what my students can expect from me outside of the very, superficial, oh, you can expect that I will answer emails within 24 hours or I'll grade papers in 72 hours, right? I wanted a more complete commitment from me to them. So reassure students by making your commitments visible, right? I will always explain why we're doing something. I will not only make you do busy work, right? I will treat your questions and challenges with respect. I will monitor your progress. You might think that the third bullet is trivial, but it's not. They often think that they're left to their own devices, and really they're not. We're there to help them, right? And that means that we also sometimes have to monitor their grade. I mean, they monitor their grade, but they oftentimes don't know what to do with it. Okay, I got this and this and that, but how do I get from that point to something that would be better looking for me at the end of the semester? What I expect from you. Tread lightly here because, like I said, the syllabus is already loaded with a lot of expectations that we have of them. But these are very, to me at least, the way I read the syllabus, our syllabi typically, there's a component of threat to me. There's something punitive about it to me, right? It's not really inviting you into the process. It's like, okay, if you don't do this, then there's all these consequences. This is more inviting them again into the process, right? So what I expect from you in terms of participation, how do we participate in this class? How do we analyze data in this class? And so on and so forth, right? So I expect you to ask questions. You don't need to be perfect, right? You just need to stay engaged. Respect each other's ideas, things along those lines, that type of expectation. So something that transcends the mundane, so to speak. How we'll learn together. This is another really important one. So share your approach to classroom dynamics or teaching methods, okay? Because we have the tendency to tell them, this is what we'll do. Okay, but why? Okay, what are we going to accomplish? How does this relate to your degrees? And I know that you cannot tackle everyone's degree, right? But maybe you can select a couple of them that, the degrees that the typical degrees of the students that are enrolled in your courses and address those. So, for example, this course is structured around active participation, right? Mistakes are part of the process. We'll build knowledge together. We're not here just to regurgitate the material, right? And then a note about support, inclusion, equity, right? So demonstrate that you care for students' well-being and belonging. I'm going to stress this again. This is especially important in post-COVID times because these students are really struggling with mental health, right? So everything and anything inviting, right, will communicate that. So I welcome feedback about how I can make the learning environment better for you. Then the second bullet, it says, I know life doesn't pause for school. If you're struggling, please reach out early. I'll work with you. Now, you might read it and you go, this is so fluffy. I'm not going to say this. And you don't have to, okay? You don't have to. If it's not you, don't say anything that doesn't feel natural to you. But also, because it seems like the vast majority of people here are native speakers of English, you know how it hits differently if we leave out the first bit and we just say, if you're struggling, reach out to me, okay? As opposed to, hey, I know that, life gets rough occasionally. So, I prefer to work with you beforehand, right? When we can still fix things rather than after the fact, right? And lastly, um, create some sort of or incorporate some sort of a closing invitation or reassurance, which leaves students with this encouragement and openness, right? Instead of creating these barriers. So I'm excited to learn with you. You belong here. Your voice matters, and so on and so forth. So those are the elements that would need to go into that kind of document. So how do we put all of that into practice? Well, first of all, share your philosophy on the first day of classes. You don't have to read through all of it, but mention the most important things, right? But again, also keep in mind that this teaching philosophy is not going to be a laundry list of everything that you hold to be true when it comes to teaching and learning. We're all teachers with experience here, and we have plenty to say about it. So this is only going to be what's really important to them. So technically, everything that goes into that published document should be things that you can convey in a couple of minutes on the first day of class. Make it easy to access or to find. Link it to something in the syllabus, right? Maybe how you describe your course components or whatever. And you know that if they have to fish for it, then it's not going to happen. Now you may be thinking, okay, well, a second ago you just said that they don't read anything, so why would they read this if it's hyperlinked to the syllabus? Perfectly fair. Well, consider quizzing them on the most important aspects of it. So you're thinking, how do I do that? Well, you can do a syllabus quiz. I used to be a syllabus quiz person, and then I wasn't, and now I am again. But my first syllabus quiz was just, checking whether they had read the syllabus and the most important parts of that syllabus. Now, I do still have a few questions that pertain to, the policies that are outlined in the syllabus, but the bulk of it, the bulk of the syllabus quiz is really, have they gone over my teaching philosophy and have they acquainted themselves with what's important for me when it comes to teaching and learning, right? And it's also when you set it up as, I'll show you an example in a second. So when you set it up as a page on Canvas, it can be set up in such a way that you have to, ideally read it and then mark that it's done. But technically you can just scroll and, and mark that it's done, right? Addie, technically you don't have to read it. But, we also need to assume that our students are not these villains who are out to get us, right? Okay, so that's how we do that in practice. Here's an example of what I have. So, Addie, can I make this bigger? Can I escape from this bit here? I was just trying to make this disappear so that the whole screen. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, thank you, Constantine. Okay, this is why you have colleagues, great colleagues. Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, Number one. So here you see that I'm going to try to stop scrolling it so that you guys can see a little bit about what I'm talking about here. But what I want to bring to your attention here is that I started off with expectations, what they can expect from me. And it's a relatively long list, okay? Towards the end, I have a few expectations that are, mundane. I will, respond to your emails in 48 hours and, you will always have access to your grade. But there's a lot more, Number one, I will stay abreast with current findings and cutting edge research in my field, right? Now you're thinking we all have the obligation to do that. We do, but sometimes we don't, okay? And so this is important. This is really a commitment that we have to our students. I will always be prepared for class, no improvisations, okay? Some people do engage in class really well by improvising, but that's not me. And that was important for me to communicate to my students. And also, I guess I forgot to mention that at some point in time, this is also important because both teachers and students sometimes have these generalized notions that, a teacher is a teacher is a teacher, and a learning process is a learning process is a learning process, and participation is participation is participation, but it's really not, okay? So maybe how I define participation is not how you define participation or you define participation. So by clarifying it here, they know how to behave in your class and how to be successful in your class. But what success is in my class is not necessarily success in your class, right? And then I promise to deliver the material in a meaningful and engaging way. Also notice that I tell them meaningful means this, engaging means that. So if you make a long list of, okay, you can expect this and that, and it reads like some sort of a technical document to them, then we're really not accomplishing what we want to accomplish. So we want to speak their language. That's all that we want, right? So everything that we hold to be true about teaching and learning needs to be communicated in their language. So meaningful means one thing to me, right? Probably, it's a similar idea to what Konstantin has, but I teach linguistics and Konstantin teaches literature. So maybe there are some differences, and there's no harm done in defining what meaningful is in my class as opposed to in his class. Engaging, same thing. I'm committed to your learning and success in this course, right? And then again, in that vein, I will be especially attentive to our progress as a group and so on and so forth. So I tell them what it means to be committed to their learning and success in the course. Also, to the degree that it's possible, I'll be attentive to your individual needs. I also explain to them how, right? I'm transparent about course expectations, right? And then some of the more mundane ones, like I said, how quickly I will grade, how quickly I will respond to their emails, and so on and so forth. So these are the expectations that I started with, and it was important to me to start with these because, like I said, for the longest time, there was no place where I could communicate this to my students, right? And I just didn't think that it was fair to assume that they know what they can expect from me. And again, what they can expect from me may be a little bit different than what they can expect from you. But that's not how I started. So these are here, they've been here maybe a semester or two. How I started off is with these three chunks: collaborative, hypothesis formation and reevaluation, meaningful effort, student at the center stage of learning, right? So I'll explain to you what I mean by that. So remember that at the beginning of my exposition, I told you that the reason why I started thinking about this topic is because I caught myself in a situation where I was repeatedly talking about the same topics, right? And I just wasn't able to communicate that to the students in a meaningful fashion. So this is what I started off with. The number one thing that I wanted to communicate to them is that the way we approach learning in my particular class is by means of collaborative hypothesis formation and reevaluation, okay? And this is really important because science, especially science in the 21st century, is a collaborative process. So I don't want them to be not obsessed, but maybe obsessed and burdened in a way by this notion that they have to go at it alone and they have to figure out everything alone and they have to be accurate and correct, at a 100% rate and things like that. So that's what I do here. I explain to them a little bit about how modern science works, but then I also tells them, okay, let's translate this into your language. What does this mean for you and your participation in this course? So then I go and I say, it means that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process for all human beings. They are not unique to you. You'd be surprised how many of them think that only they, have this one question and that everybody else understands everything, or that only they were able to make that one mistake. And, even if you have, 1 year of teaching underneath your belt, that couldn't be further away from the truth. As a matter of fact, I invite you to not think of them as mistakes, rather think about them, think about your contributions in class as a hypothesis formation process referenced above. So you will give an answer that accounts for a part of the data, your classmate will offer another bit, I will add something else, and in that way, collectively, we will arrive at the quote unquote correct answer, or rather, the one answer that accounts for 1% of the data, right? And so now that I read this out loud to you, an audience of my peers, I know that this is childish, right? But to them, this is what they need to hear, okay? So I started off with that because I wanted to communicate to them how we go about learning in this particular class. And again, with the understanding that how we go about learning in my class is not necessarily how learning happens in other classes. Meaningful effort, right? So it was also very important to me to communicate to them that perfection is not how I define participation. So they frequently come assuming that, again, they have to have the only way to engage with the process of learning is by means of correct answers. And that couldn't be further away from the truth. So fundamentally, what I communicate in these couple of paragraphs is that what's really important is that you put some time and effort into the reading, the whatever preparation materials before the class. And then in class, I tell them, really, it's bungee jumping in many ways, right? So throw yourself into that process without preoccupation whether your answer will be right or wrong, right? And also sometimes participation means that you are going to ask questions, right? So participation is not always, spitting out correct answers, right? So you can ask questions stemming from not understanding what we're talking about. You can ask questions that stem from not understanding the reading. Participation has many different shapes and forms, is what I was trying to communicate to them. Also, you will see here this one bit where I say, I need to see a demonstrable effort to contribute to a learning process. That means that when I ask you whether you can help us out or whether you can answer something for us, plainly declining, saying you simply can't or won't, would not be a good example of demonstrable effort, right? Now, this might be, going into great detail, but this was important to me because, again, I caught myself in a situation where, we converse in class and then I'll say, okay, Addie, can you help us out? Or, Konstantin, what do you think about this? And they'll just say, I don't know. Well, that's not how I define participation, so you need to say something, right? I think somewhere there, it also talks about the fact that improvisation is not participation. Okay. And then, students at the center stage of learning. So yes, I do lecture some, but what's really important for me that my students know is that I envision learning as a process in which they take responsibility for their own learning. I will be the guide. I will provide all the materials. I will provide all the readings, everything that I need to do behind the proverbial curtain. I'll do it and I'll lecture some. Okay. But fundamentally, I want them to take responsibility for their learning. And I tell them why. I tell them that when I'm in charge of everything, then you're hovering around these two ladders of the Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. But when you take responsibility for your learning process, then you're climbing, right? So you're among the top. And that is really important because we want them to be able to do these things independently. And so this is how I started off. I just started off with these three. And if I'm being honest, I think that they were shorter paragraphs when I started. But, as time goes by, I keep tweaking them and making them, in my view, not better, but more efficient, I think, or I hope more efficient. And then would there be or could there be a talk without AI these days? Excuse me. But notice how I phrase it, right? So I didn't say anything along the lines of a note about AI usage or, something as strict as that. I think that we use it, we should assume that they use it, and I want to approach this, and I don't have all the answers, but I want to approach learning from here on out, learning alongside AI, okay? And so here, what was really important for me to communicate to them is this bit, that using AI isn't just about technical skill, prompt engineering, being able to evaluate the input, the output and all that good stuff. It's also about making ethical choices, right? So this is one thing that they need to think about. And one thing that I communicate to them is that also I'm well aware of the fact that, especially with new technologies, students often make mistakes not knowing that they're crossing the line. So I feel like by saying that, I'm opening it up a little bit for them to say, oh, okay, I can experiment with something, but I need to just check with her so that we are, in agreement about what we're doing here, right? And I also firmly believe that as we discover or uncover everything that AI has to offer, we act like experts. And it's fine, but I also think that our students have a lot more to teach us about it that we also don't know. So I would like to open some sort of a conversation about it, which is why I tell them, use it. But if you're not sure, right, shoot me an email. Let's see how it works. And then maybe we can make it work so that it's not crossing the line. And then these last two bits, as you can see here, are coming directly from David Yeager's SMU CTE talk in the fall. And so what Yeager pointed out is that it's not about threats, it's about how you present it to the student, right? So he said, number one, you need to make it clear to the students that when you use these AI tools as a shortcut, you are giving an opportunity to this AI tool to attend this college that is expensive and a big privilege to attend. So listen, if you're okay with that, spending your money and your time that particular way, well, that's on you, because fundamentally our students are adults and when we cannot micromanage that for them. And also, not only that, not only are you giving this tool your money and your opportunity that was given to you, but also you are teaching it to replace you in the future. Again, if you still want to use AI after that, at some point in time, we need to let go, But again, it boils down to presenting what the consequences are instead of just threatening, don't, because I'm going to police it. You can't really police it. And then the other one that I really like, this is a really important insight for me at least. Yeager said that oftentimes when students use these shortcuts, it's because it has to do with questioning their own abilities. It's a matter of not having enough confidence in themselves, right? And so he says they do this. It's important to communicate to the students that, hey, listen, you have been vetted through and through, and you are here because you have values and ideas and experiences that we are interested in learning about, okay? And this is something that AI cannot replicate. So don't, because you're here because of you, because what you have, because of what you had before you came to SMU. Okay. And let's see. I think that is the bulk of it. The next thing are activities. Well, let me open it up for some questions about what I presented, and then we can dig into the activities. We still have plenty of time. Any questions?
If you do have a question, if you use the microphone, that would be great.
Yes.
I have a quick question. It was interesting, very thought-provoking when you put forth the idea that in our syllabi, very often it's very punitive, but then, and I love the idea of doing some sort of a quiz at the beginning of the semester, testing students on whether or not they read the syllabi and whether or not they read your philosophy. But I'm wondering if you don't want to make reading the philosophy feel, you don't want it to be punitive if a student doesn't do it. How do you go about, I guess, if you make it a quiz, it feels punitive, or do you give some sort of reward for a student who does well as opposed to penalizing the students who don't do well, so that you're not.
That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for that detail. So It's not a graded quiz. I mean, you have to score something, but then the consequence is that if you don't score a certain number, you just don't have access to the rest of materials. So it's more their investment, than a punishment per se. But I do like your idea of maybe, connecting it to some sort of reward, but I would have to think a little bit about it to see what that would look like. In fact, when you mentioned it, it dawned on me that, maybe we can read, bits of it in class. And then, because really with the questions that I ask about my teaching philosophy, and there's more than just a few in that syllabus quiz, it's not so much, I don't want to see if they read it. I want to see if they understood it, because the questions are not asked, okay, she believes that, learning is a collaborative process and a process of hypothesis formation and reevaluation, true or false. No, it's not that kind of thing, right? So they have to kind of think about what they read, and based on that, show me that they understood. I give them some examples. Okay, would this be an example of a collaborative process, or, this other thing, and things like that. But I like your idea about the reward. I just don't know what that would be yet, but I don't think it's overly punitive, because, it's not a grade per se. You just, I mean, I guess you just cannot get access to any of the materials.
Mia online said that she uses a 1% of the total grade reward for reading it.
Oh, I like that. So kind of like extra credit. I like that. Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's terrific. I think having it simply as a gate to unlock the rest of the material and not at all graded, and not even reward. I think that those easily come into extrinsic transactional motivations. And I think just, get on the team. This is what we're doing together.
Exactly.
So I think you could easily endanger it by throwing points at it. So.
I like that. Thank you for that comment. Yes. So basically, if you do this, or when you do this, you will be part of the team, which is what we want to accomplish. Yes. Anything else?
I really like the use of your Bloom's taxonomy and showing it to them. I just did this with a student where the student was confused about how the paper that they were writing was too descriptive. And I was like, yes, let me show you this triangle. You need to be one level up. It's harder, but it shows that you're, assessing, you're evaluating, and you're arguing, which is a different level than your descriptive, which is below. So I think sometimes showing that triangle is really helpful to students.
Yes, especially for our visual learners, and to also see that, these are not things that we're making up. There's research, that supports these ideas. Yes.
Can you hear me? So really liked it. I have a question. Have you had students giving you feedback before and after you had this?
No, well, let me think about it. No, I take that back. I have had feedback, not in terms of the content that needs to appear there or not, but I have had on more than a few occasions students who, in front of the whole class or individually, come to thank me for for sharing this particular approach with them, because they claim that in other classes, and I don't know where and how, but that it's not like that, And so this is not to, to talk negatively about colleagues who don't do this. Like I said, there are courses where, even in my introduction to general linguistics courses, where towards the beginning of the semester we talk about theoretical linguistics, it's not really, it depends. It's very black or white, yes or no, and that's the end of that story. But so in certain courses, I understand that you need to take that approach, but it's important for me that they know that it's not an approach that we implement in every class, right? So this approach that I have is a successful one for this particular class. So thus far, I've only heard good things, and I can see, occasionally when they ask about certain activities, okay, why this or how that, then I'll take them back. Okay, remember when we talked about the teaching philosophy at the beginning of the semester? So then I relate it, and I think I have that point somewhere in my presentation. And then they go, oh, okay, so that's what we're working on now. Yes, that's what we're working on now. Okay, thank you.
The other suggestion would be, like an incentive is, instead of having a written format, you could also use that as a script and then record a video. And then be that the prompt for the quiz, where now I've shared a little bit about me and my teaching philosophy. I want to get to know you. There's a way for you to respond with video. I would like for you to introduce yourself, talk about who you are, what is your philosophy about learning and teaching? Or not teaching. How about what is your philosophy about learning? How do you learn best?
Exactly.
How do you like meet? So that's a way for you to get to know the students as well.
Mhm.
And it's done in a synchronous way that you might not spend time in class, but you might have every student having to respond before classes start.
Mhm. Yeah, and Padlet, this multimodal platform that I talked about in my last presentation, it's a very straightforward platform. It kind of combines slides, videos, audios, images, whatever you can think of, and you can create very easily this poster practically with students' videos, and they can even go and comment on a few of them. And, it really depends on what you want to do with that activity. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, let's look at a few activities. So the first activity, I was wondering if you could think back to your most recent teaching philosophy. It doesn't matter if it was, 5 or 10 years ago or a month ago, but what are the 3 core values that stand out as defining your approach to teaching and learning? And if you could write them down. So 3 core values that would be, you would say, the pillars of your teaching philosophy. And when you're ready, if you want to share with us, that'd be grand.
And for the folks in Zoom, you can unmute yourselves and participate if you want to, or through the chat.
Any volunteers? Yeah, here we go.
Thanks. So I think flexibility
Love that.
kind of aligns with what you said about improvisation, but in a more positive way, I guess.
Mhm.
Okay, so not like this is always I'm trying to negotiate this in my class. Like if I'm
Rigor and flexibility, right?
right answer and only the right answer, or if I'm open to the flexibility of another properly right answer and then going in that direction, and that can bring the whole class into a totally new area that we didn't think of before.
Exactly. I love that.
Flexibility, collaboration, and connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Knowing how to connect better with students, no matter who they are,
Exactly.
backgrounds, and all that.
I really like that. I also want to clarify that when I said no improvisation, I meant improvisation in the worst possible way, mainly because I don't know how to improvise. So everything needs to be, anchored from A to Z. But I absolutely understand what you were talking about. And that's one of my, when I had time and space to, talk at length about my teaching philosophy, then I would, reflect on the fact that this balance between rigor and flexibility is till this day one of my biggest challenges, right? Because I want it to be, a rigorous course, but also I want to leave room for that flexibility and adapt to my students' needs and their level of knowledge at that point in time. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
We have a Zoom one.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
My three items are first, I think that I should provide an environment that lets the students form and develop a personal model of the topic of the class. So either a strong opinion or a way of connecting the topic of the class to their life.
Okay.
And this may not work, in a math class, I'm not sure. But the second is to encourage and give tools to the students to connect the topic of the class to their current life and the life that they expect for themselves in 10 years and in 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
The last is I always ask the students on the first day of class to tell me what is required by you to have an experience in this class that it was excellent for you, and what would you require to say that this class was world changing, because supposedly we are supposed to make world changers. And I commit that I will make the class excellent for every one of them, and that I will strive my best to make the class world changing for as many of them as I can, because I think you can commit to the first, and the second may not be possible for everyone, but certainly for some.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's precisely it. And thank you for mentioning the fact that we're not going to be able to tackle all of these. We're not going to be able to, rock everybody's world, but we do have an obligation to at least try. And when we start these kinds of conversations, excuse me, we open the door and an opportunity for students to share how they can excel, how they can succeed, instead of us imposing those standards on them. Thank you. In the back.
Yeah, the three I put down. So transparency, which actually increases the more that they seek me out and ask questions. I teach journalism, and asking good questions is part of gaining more transparency from me. So,
of course,
I'll give them what I can, but they've got to come at me and ask. The highest expectations for our time together, which means classroom time, but also when we engage with assignments. Like, I expect the best from you at every moment. You should expect nothing less from me at the same time.
I love that.
And then you mentioned this earlier. It's preparation. It's preparation that leads to participation. If you're far more likely to participate, we all feel that way, is if we feel coming into class that we prepared for that discussion.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, well, now let's move on to number 2. And number 2 is related to number 1. So it says, look at or think about your recent syllabus and reflect. What assumptions are embedded in this document? Does it reflect your core values that we identified in activity number 1? And what might be missing that could clarify your intentions or values. So it might be harder if you don't have your laptop and you're not able to, go over it, but it doesn't have to be a systematic analysis. Just kind of, try to recall what is in your syllabi. And if these 3 values are somehow communicated in a way that is transparent or intelligible to your students. And I'm not expecting a no answer. Sometimes the answer will be yes, and sometimes the answer is partial, right? Partially it's reflected. But what I'm trying to accomplish with this activity is to develop awareness of where are those empty spaces, right, that need to be better elaborated on, right? So what is missing and what do we need to add, or what do we need to rephrase to communicate those core values better?
I don't need to pull up my syllabi because I know from
Perfect.
listening to your presentation. I love with the philosophy that there is a space to offer to the students insight on my values. as a teaching artist because I teach in a creative area.
Mhm.
And we've actually had conversations in our faculty about this, wanting our students to be much more thoughtful about the things that they create in their filmmaking and their screenplays, considering the ethical implications
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
what they create.
Okay.
And so I absolutely believe that certainly be a statement about my values and also including in the syllabus information about students being very thoughtful about the things that they write about and what they decide to make films about
Mhm.
and considering the ethical implications
Mhm.
of these stories
Wonderful.
because
Excellent.
that's extremely important.
It is. It is. Anybody else?
There's one from Zoom.
Mhm.
There's assumption that students understand how to navigate Canvas, keep track of deadlines. The biggest one, to communicate proactively.
Mhm.
Those are assumptions.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the technical ones, but it's very important without a doubt. Very nice. Anything else? All right, well then let's take a look at the last one. This last one might appear a little bit redundant in comparison to activity number 3, but it says, what messages about learning and teaching would you like to communicate to your students? Do you feel like you're repeating the same learning and teaching messages to students each term? And if so, what are they? But to me, this question is different than question number 2, because question number 2 is, okay, are there certain elements of teaching and learning that you hold to be true, but that you haven't communicated and you need to go and address those. But this one is, when you think about, how you engage with your students, are there some things that you repeatedly have to talk about that are simply not landing with your students that maybe are also part of your philosophy about teaching and learning that you maybe need to include? And it can be something, it doesn't have to be very philosophical. It could be, like I said, for me, actually, the idea came through that, a repetitive mention of what participation is and what I like it to look like, right? It could be, we heard a second ago about ask questions, ask questions. Well, there are different kinds of asking questions, right? So do you maybe find yourself in a position where you have to, explain to them way too many times what does it look like to meaningfully ask questions in the field of journalism, right? If you feel like you need to communicate that, every couple of weeks, then that needs to be in that document. Is there something like that that you could identify that maybe needs to go into this document? Yes.
So for me, even for introductory kind of classes, writing is really important. Written communication. I have so many assignments, but I don't have anything explicitly in my syllabus.
There you go.
But I just assume that so many assignments, reflection almost each week, even though it's not a writing intensive, because I really believe that's the key to their learning. So I think I need to put that.
There you go.
I really like your idea about maybe I'll put it directly in the
Yeah,
syllabus.
no, absolutely. Feel free to use my materials. And as I also mentioned in the remaining talks, if you are not really certain how to go about this, how to prepare it, I'm happy to sit down with you at some point in time and we can kind of, brainstorm it together, figure out different ways that would work for your unique situation. Because like I said, mine is unique to me. And this is precisely the point, that this document is going to be unique to every professor, but these are important messages that we need to communicate to our students. Okay, well, so because we only have a few minutes left, some takeaways: sharing your teaching philosophy strengthens the learning environment. Students gain clarity, confidence, and a sense of partnership. A thoughtful philosophy bridges your intentions with student experiences. And that takes us to the very beginning of this talk, that for me, the main purpose behind this is to bring those students from the outside of that circle, from those margins, into the epicenter of the learning process, which is where we are. And excuse me, with that said, can you share with us your own key takeaway? Yes.
Yeah, so all of these things are things I very deeply, strongly agree with and espouse and feel very proud about my accomplishment of achieving these things in my class. And now that we're talking about them, I feel like I've completely failed to do these up front. And I think by the end of the semester, they're completely bought in. And I feel like I'm doing a great job with that. And they know where I'm coming from and they understand what my philosophy is. But my syllabus is like this precise, clinical, sterile, mechanical,
Yes.
awful thing.
Yes.
That's really, really clear and informative.
Yes.
But it's soulless,
But it doesn't
and it
create a
has
connect.
none of me in it. Yeah. So and I don't have a formal like opening where I'm kind of introducing myself or our approach or the philosophy. They pick up the beat as
Yes.
they go. But anyway, it's gonna.
But I think, thank you so much. And I think it's wonderful that they get to that point at the end of the semester, but I think you would have an even more productive semester or a more meaningful relationship if you just brought it towards the beginning. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else?
I really like the why you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
which I say a lot, but sometimes it might be implicit.
Exactly.
I really liked it. I mean,
I
especially
think-
the clarity. I'm all for stating things,
Yeah.
restating things right away. And I would love it if I was a student myself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that because we're experts in the area of learning and teaching, no matter the field, I think that we assume way too many things. And I think that it's important to think what things were like when we were beginners, and it was not as straightforward as it is now. In fact, there's a big gap. Sorry.
There's a comment, there's a question.
Sure.
The comment is, what I've noticed is that even if the message is the same, the delivery usually shifts a little each semester based on the group, the pace of the course, and what students seem to respond to. And the question is, did you say there's a specific place on Canvas where we should post our teaching philosophy?
So, like I said, I link it to my syllabus where we talk about the description of course components and we talk about how we define participation in the course. So I have, a couple of very short sentences about what participation is in my course in the syllabus. But then there I have a hyperlink, that says, okay, if you want to learn more about how we go about teaching and learning in this class, click here, right? And so that's where I plug it in. But I wouldn't be exclusive to say that that's the only possible way to do that. I think that you can put that as one of the first, hyperlinks in your syllabus, or on the homepage. Even it depends on how much you want to emphasize it. I don't have a solution for the fact that it's going to change within the semester, but I would collect that data from that semester and then see what I can integrate into the teaching philosophy that I've already prepared, right? So you can talk about different scenarios. And I think that might resonate with some students, but not others, but everybody's accounted for. Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I'm thinking, in simple syllabus, you can create different sections. So even though your teaching philosophy might be different from course to course, you can create a section with a headline, My Teaching Philosophy for This Course. And then you can tailor to whatever subject matter that you're teaching for that, but have it be a very personal, section of it. Because I think that also that opens a door when you put it on simple syllabus. And if it is published in the catalog of simple syllabi, if other students are planning on taking your course and seeing that, I think it would make them more likely to go and register for your course and not somebody else's course.
I think that's a great point because they see that well before they enroll in the course, right? And I would also add to that if you're going to do it that way, I mean, certainly there are 3 or 4 values that carry over from course to course. So that can be the one thing that doesn't change from one of your simple syllabi to another, right? But then you can have these more tailored versions integrated into Canvas or maybe further down in the simple syllabus or something like that. Anything else? I think that's it.
There's a class at 2.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the Zoom crowd as well.
Thank you.